Now, I-Team reporter Kevin Calwary is here with the story.
The Museum of Science and Industry has exhibits ranging from dinosaurs to energy, operating on a budget of nearly $2 million. It employs 45 people and is funded by both a private foundation and Hillsborough County taxpayers. Peter Philippe is in charge of maintenance at the museum. He says he doesn't like what he sees and he doesn't like how money is spent.
I've been here 17 years and I haven't seen anything like it. I mean, public money, it's misused. Foundation board misled. Just recently, the county commission being misled on numbers.
Earlier this month, Philippe took his allegations to the head of the county's security force. The allegations included county vehicles being used for camping trips and personal trips to Miami, using county equipment to clean a sailboat, having a county worker do home repairs on county time with county parts and county equipment.
I do not believe that there is information there that should be of alarm to the citizens of this county. Are there some things that perhaps judgment would say maybe you shouldn't have done? Maybe.
The allegations are unfounded. The county vehicles have not been used for personal use.
As for employees working on county time, Executive Director Whit Ostrenko says it doesn't happen. As for taking parts and equipment home,
staff can use Museum Foundation equipment if they request permission to use that, and they can even use material goods as long as they replace those material items. That's part of our policy.
Philippe has since alleged that a car was improperly purchased and that the selection process of the museum's 1 millionth visitor was rigged.
It was fixed.
Philippe says Ostrenko told department heads that he wanted a certain type of family for promotional reasons.
That he wants this working class type, good-looking family, white family coming up, you know.
But Ostrenko says that's not true. He says a grandmother from Punta Gorda hit the lucky number.
No, in fact, our public relations department was in total control of that, and we had people out with clickers counting down the number of people.
In Tampa, Kevin Calwary for the I-Team.
Museum officials say if there are budget cuts, Mr. Philippe's job will be eliminated, and Mr. Philippe says that has nothing to do with all of this. Security officials say their investigation will be finished in a week or two.
Still to come, it's draft time in the NBA, and Al Keck is going to be here with Who's Going Where next. Money and personnel. I-Team reporter Kevin Calwary has our story.
I'm very pleased that the report has come back indicating that there are no significant problems of any sort at the museum.
That's the word from Pat Bean, Assistant County Administrator. She asked investigators 2 weeks ago to look into allegations raised by Peter Philippe, head of the museum's maintenance department. His main target was Whit Ostrenko, the museum's executive director.
Well, I think the allegations are unfounded.
Those allegations, which could not be substantiated, included county vehicles being used for camping trips and personal trips to Miami, using county equipment to clean a sailboat, and having a county worker do home repairs on county time with county parts and county equipment. County investigators cleared Ostrenko and other museum employees of all improprieties except one, that having to do with the use of a county vehicle. Ostrenko had used a county car for personal errands.
The one issue does relate to use of the car and how that relates to auto allowance, and he has written a check to pay back for the one incident where there was a question.
In Tampa, Kevin Calwary for the I-Team.
Investigators said that they were unable to substantiate the other allegations, which included improperly purchasing a car and rigging the selection of the museum's 1 millionth visitor. The allegations were made by an employee who sees.
Health professionals say AIDS is no longer just a disease among homosexuals. It is the 9th leading cause of death in Florida, and this is not a story about what's right or wrong, but a story about health. The News Center 10 I-Team has discovered a place in Tampa that's been open for 20 years. Few people know it's there or know what happens inside, and tonight we're going to tell you. It's a bathhouse for homosexuals. Consider this a warning about sensitive material to follow. It's in graphic detail. I-Team reporter Kevin Calwary is in our newsroom. Kevin?
John, we have found a business in Tampa that caters to people who want the kind of sex that can kill them. The place is Club Tampa. It is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week haven for anonymous, multi-partner gay sex. Club Tampa is not unique. There are many of these so-called bathhouses around the country. We start our investigation with a quick look from coast to coast.
Any city that does not realize that they have a problem at this point has their head buried very deeply in the sand.
We watched a number of males engaging in sexual intercourse with each other.
We are restricting high-risk sexual activity. It's prohibited.
They were promoting anonymous, multi-partner sex on the premises. The disease is spreading to the general community as well.
We're after stopping an activity that can kill people.
There's no doubt that what happens in a private bathhouse, a public bathhouse,
known for its open and kinky sex.
It's a gay health club. We're just a small business. We're here. We're not trying to push a point.
But there is a point. It's not morality or anyone's civil rights. It's the spread of a deadly disease. For the last 2 decades, some of the most sexually promiscuous men in the area have visited Club Tampa. They're not all homosexual. Some are men who go home to their wives and girlfriends after they've been inside. So just what is inside? First, we asked an undercover detective with the Tampa Police Department.
The guy laying on the bed was groaning and moaning and carrying on.
In 1982, 7 policemen went into Club Tampa to investigate illegal sex acts.
The only allowable mode of dress at that time inside the club was a towel, which you were issued when you checked in.
Rows and rows of cubicles big enough for a single bed is still the most prominent feature of the club.
And I noticed the doors open on many of the rooms, and there would be males lying on a bed in there, some of them masturbating, some of them motioning for you to come into the room with them.
And then there were the dimly lit orgy rooms, places for groups of men to have sex on a platform bed.
And then on this white area, there were very dark shapes, and they were moving around, sort of like looking at snakes, wriggling around on this white surface.
In another room is a whirlpool. At the time of this raid, a sign prohibiting sex was posted above the spa.
The guy that ran the place said that they didn't like for that type of sexual activity to occur inside the pool because the semen clogged the filter up.
When they were finally done, 156 men would be arrested for lewd and lascivious behavior. The club paid for everyone's attorney. All but one was convicted, paid a fine, and went home. The police never told the press. That was 1982, when the AIDS epidemic was just beginning to devastate the gay community. And it was before 2 employees of Club Tampa acquired AIDS. We wanted to take a look ourselves, so a member of the I-Team and an escort walked up and joined. Despite our attempts at secrecy, the club had already been tipped off about our intentions to videotape what it's like on a busy night, but not before we had already been inside once. Here's what we found. A free condom as you enter the club. Rooms, 38 of them, rented for 8-hour periods. A requirement that only towels be worn. Men soliciting sex from one another and entering rooms together, and open invitations for multi-partner sex. Hello? What I wanted to ask you is if we could take a tour of your place with the TV camera.
No. Well, it's a gay health club, basically.
Do you have exercise
But
equipment?
we don't advertise. We have a couple of Nautilus machines, which basically most people don't use that much.
Manager Jim McPeak says Club Tampa is a place for gay men to feel uninhibited.
Do they come here to have sex with people?
I'm sure that happens. But a lot of people honestly come here because it's the only place for them to hide out from their bosses and their families and lovers, whatever. The thing about this place, you know, if you wanted to close these places, all you're going to get is an influx of activity in much more public areas like the parks and things.
New York, San Francisco, Miami. Officials there have either closed down the bathhouses or forced them to change the way they do business. In Tampa, they inspect the whirlpool twice a year, and they do weekly testing and counseling with the patrons. John?
Kevin, technically it's not illegal, is it? It's a private club. But why has the health department not been more attentive to it?
Well, they're doing as much as the law permits them to do. And as you'll see tomorrow night, officials from Miami, New York, and San Francisco will tell us what kind of ordinances there should be on the books and what the health department and city government should be doing.
Very provoking, Kevin. Thank you.
The Centers for Disease Control is out with new
promoted across the country. Public health experts from San Francisco tell us that if this city waits for a body count to get officials motivated, it has waited too long. In 1986, the county health department closed the Sulphur Springs pool because the high amount of bacteria in the water could cause swimmers to get sick. However, months before, an undercover police detective alerted them to a place where people were exposed to an even deadlier threat: AIDS.
I went and talked to the health department. I think I talked to him before the AIDS scare.
But nothing happened. Club Tampa is still doing business in the shadows of the health department, a 5-minute walk away. Chuck Keene of the Tampa AIDS Network says he's never been in Club Tampa, but says bathhouses are all the same.
Everywhere around the country they call these health clubs. And clearly it is a disguise for what in fact are places where there is both safe and unsafe sex occurring.
And it's the unsafe sex that has caused alarm nationwide. Sex with strangers, sex with numerous partners, sex without a condom. It's become much less of a private matter, much more of a matter of concern for local government. But here in Tampa, we don't see the local concern. On a recent visit to Club Tampa, a member of our I-Team was given a towel and a condom as he entered the club. Only the towel was required wear. We saw men entering private rooms after publicly made propositions of sex, and a naked man soliciting sex from inside an open room. Club manager Jim McPeak.
You don't have any multi-sex activity in there? Not that I'm aware of. If there's anything, if people are playing in public, they get stopped, or they're supposed to get stopped.
Every 15 minutes we go inside, we check, make sure nobody is doing anything.
Back in the mid-'80s in San Francisco, it was known as the Bathhouse Wars. It was one of the cities hit hardest and earliest by the AIDS epidemic. Gay bathhouses became the focal point where sexual freedom collided with public safety.
Brothers and sisters, that is the first step to fascism.
Eventually, tough new restrictions and a lack of demand put the bathhouses, straight and gay, out of business.
We have in place very strong anti-discrimination and confidentiality protections, and we view those as being an essential part of any city's public health response to the HIV epidemic.
At what point should a city realize that they may have a problem?
I would say any city that does not realize that they have a problem at this point has their head buried very deeply in the sand.
Listen, you're on notice. Clean up your act.
New York City followed suit, but with a much heavier hand. They padlocked the doors to sex clubs and succeeded only in driving the behavior elsewhere. And last March in Miami, a newspaper report graphically depicting unsafe sex at the Club Body Center provoked a county ordinance that spelled out what unsafe sex was, made it illegal, and threatened any sex club with closure if it allowed it to continue.
And we're hoping to allow the continuation of the positive role as a community center, as a center for learning, and just get rid of the negative role in promoting the anonymous sex, multi-partner sex.
10 years ago, this disease was unknown. Today, it is the 4th largest killer in Dade County. It turned out to be a lot less controversial in the end than I thought it would be. And I think because the responsible leadership of serious gay groups came forward and said, it's our friends that are dying, and each year we have less friends.
The Dade County ordinance prohibits private rooms and sex without condoms in a club. It also requires brighter lighting. But here in Tampa, the fire marshal doesn't even inspect the building to make sure it's safe because his office doesn't know it's here. However, the director of the health department says his staff not only inspects the hot tub twice a year, but also educates the patrons about the dangers of AIDS.
We are very concerned about transmission of diseases in bathhouses. Believe me, we are.
They now conduct a weekly clinic at Club Tampa, but Sims says bathhouses are just a small front in the much bigger battle against AIDS.
We believe that the best weapon to combat the AIDS epidemic is education, education, and more education.
We basically have been scaring people, excuse the expression, to death by putting up posters and information.
That's a part of it.
Dr. Don Francis of the Centers for Disease Control says you just can't stop with education.
If you did a survey of gay men in Tampa right now, you'd find that they're very educated, but we know very well that education doesn't translate into behavior change. I think clearly you just can't get away with hanging up posters and passing out condoms.
So is shutting down any place, gay or heterosexual, the answer to controlling AIDS? All the experts we've talked to said no. The answer is stronger regulation of the clubs and aggressive education to change sexual habits. Cheryl?
Kevin, don't police usually crack down on this kind of behavior at these kinds of establishments?
Well, locally they did twice in the last 20 years, and we learned late tonight that city council members have spoken to some high-ranking police officials, and we'll have more on that tomorrow night.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much.
Inside this private club, men engage in multi-partner anonymous sex, which is considered by the experts to be one of the most dangerous conduits of the AIDS virus. I-Team reporter Kevin Kelwer is in our newsroom tonight with an update. What have you got for us tonight, Kevin?
Well, John, the reaction so far to our series by elected city officials has been twofold. First, shock that there is such a club, and secondly, disbelief that it has remained open. But before we get into that, we thought it curious that when it comes to sex, the city of Tampa seems to have a double standard. Rarely a month goes by that city police are not raiding a new dance club or hauling club owner Joe Redner into court. They're called morals violations, and every police and sheriff's department devotes a good chunk of money to enforcing them, from prostitution to lingerie modeling to catching men masturbating in adult bookstores. But then there's Club Tampa, a place built for gay men to go and have sex, often multi-partner anonymous sex, the most dangerous sex there is, health-wise. Police detectives haven't been inside in 9 years. We asked the detectives who made those arrests back in 1982, why?
Why do you suppose the priorities are so different?
Tough question. Tough question. Wow.
We don't get on TV 6 days a week, you know, sometimes Joe does, and we're just a small business. We're here. We're not trying to push a point like he is.
I would really hesitate to expose myself to the risk of AIDS for the sake of this investigation.
Public health is not a concern for the police department. It is, however, a matter for other government officials. In other cities, like Miami, New York, San Francisco, officials there have taken action against unsafe sex in bathhouses. Why not here?
I was a little bit upset and a little bit shocked.
City Councilman Ron Mason said our report was the first he heard about Club Tampa, but he says he thinks society turned a blind eye until now.
Before, we just sort of sat back, closed our eyes, and said they're not bothering anyone. It wasn't a health hazard in a sense, and so we just let it slide by.
The county health department is a 5-minute walk from Club Tampa, but its director says current state laws only allow his staff to inspect the spa twice a year and investigate only when there's a complaint.
I don't expect to see anyone come forward from a bathhouse and say, I was infected with the AIDS virus there.
His office currently does testing and counseling there, but Sims says he would do more if local laws were changed.
If there are activities that are occurring locally in the bathhouse that we're unaware of, that you suggest are occurring, perhaps additional attention by way of local ordinances are in order.
You know, anything the health department has suggested, we've done.
Gay activist and attorney Keith Roberts says if the city doesn't single out homosexuals in its concern about public health, gays in the area might support it.
And I think so long as that's the case and there's no witch hunt that takes place, that it's a perfectly appropriate subject to address.
I support the notion of working with the establishments rather than trying to close them down. My belief is that people will find a way and a place to have sex no matter what you do.
In San Francisco, new transmissions of the AIDS virus has dropped dramatically. We spoke to Dr. Don Francis of the Center for Disease Control, who has helped cities like San Francisco wrestle with the bathhouse issue.
The issue really has been dividing the population into them and us. That, I think, has been the biggest mistake, where we divide the population up into them and us's instead of it all being us. It clearly affects all of us.
He says the worst thing would be to shut down the bathhouses.
It'll be like those little toys you buy in the toy stores where you squeeze one end of the squeezy deal and it squeezes out the other. You'll just be chasing the population from one end to the other, and you'll be wasting an awful lot of resources.
I didn't think Tampa had anything like this.
But City Councilman Rudy Fernandez thinks shutting down the bathhouse may be the best thing.
I think the best approach is probably to enforce the ordinance we have right now that says that you can't conduct illicit sexual activities within a bathhouse.
Late this afternoon, the city's fire marshal inspected Club Tampa, and tomorrow morning, the bathhouse issue will be dealt with by City Council. Mayor Sandy Friedman refused to comment until her staff determines if there have been any violations of the law. And tomorrow, we'll have a report from City Council. John?
All right, Kevin, thanks very much.
Melton White. 10.
We've been telling you about it all week. It's called Club Tampa. It's a 24-hour-a-day bathhouse. The I-Team reported the details of the sex club where gay patrons are engaging in multi-partner anonymous sex. That's the highest risk possible when it comes to contracting the deadly AIDS virus. One city councilman tried to inspect the club today. I-Team reporter Kevin Calwary picks up the story from here.
I would like to see if we really have a health problem here, and I've been assured by your film and other people there is a health problem.
My name is Ronnie Mason.
I'd like to come in and look over your facility. Is that possible?
Sir.
Sorry?
No, you can't come in.
I think we've given him a message. I think he knows that things are coming forth. To me, it would have been wise to let me look at the facility and then make a decision. It doesn't matter whether this is a homosexual or bisexual or trisexual, whatever it might be. It's illegal, it's illegal.
Several weeks ago, a member of the I-Team, along with an escort, visited Club Tampa to see what goes on in there on a busy night. Here's what we found. A free condom as you enter, rooms, 38 of them, rented for 8-hour periods, a requirement that only towels be worn, men propositioning one another and entering rooms together, and open invitations for sex. During this morning's City Council meeting, Councilman Rudy Fernandez, who's already done research on bathhouses, advocated using the city ordinance that's already on the books.
People can't touch or fondle one another, and that any activities which are sexual in nature are to be prohibited.
City officials, ranging from police officers to council members to attorneys, will spend the next 2 to 3 weeks studying the bathhouse issue and talking to officials in other cities about how they handled the problem. In Tampa, Kevin Calwary for the I-Team.
Councilman Mason says he'll come back with at least a partial report on his findings by next Thursday's council meeting. And in the meantime, city inspectors will continue checking Club Tampa.
A mixed report card tonight from the Centers for Disease Control concerning the health habits of Americans. A new CDC study.
Center 10 I-Team is going to show us a school where people from all over the world have graduated, not after hard work in 4 years, but in a couple of hours with a little cash. Kevin Calwary is in our St. Pete newsroom with a story. Tell us about this place, Kevin.
Well, John and Sue, what we found is what some people are calling a diploma mill. We found that the best test it gives can be passed by a 12-year-old, and it will even get you into college or the Army. To find out a little more about it, the I-Team sent its college intern back to high school. Two hours north of Tampa in Levy County is Inglis, Florida. Population, 1,200. Known to students all over the country, and the world for that matter, as the home of Calvary High School. Although it only has 2 rooms and a bathroom, rented in a medical building that's for sale, people worldwide have written away for a diploma that says they graduated from an American high school. You can even order a class ring. The Department of Education even lists it as a religious, non-public school for co-eds in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grades.
Hi, how do I go about obtaining a high school diploma?
Meet Lee Allum, an intern with the I-Team. He is a 22-year-old junior at Middlesex University in London. He is not a U.S. citizen and does not have a Florida high school diploma. We sent him to Calvary High School to get one.
No classrooms.
Any chalkboards?
No chalkboards.
Any teachers?
No, no teachers.
Any other students?
No, I didn't see any other students either.
Although most people get their diploma at Calvary without ever leaving home, we wanted to see if we could get one in just a few hours. First, he registered with Francis Lane. Then he took a test and wrote an essay, which was graded by Francis Lane. He graduated. And of course, it was Francis Lane who typed his diploma and his transcript. All of this for just $60.
After the grading of the test, she had informed me that I was a graduate of Calvary High School.
All of that took 2 hours and 55 minutes. When Allum left, he left with 24 high school credits on his transcript and a 3.6 grade point average. Florida law requires that students in public schools spend 150 hours of class time for each credit hour, but not at Calvary. Allum only spent 7.5 minutes per credit.
What's your assessment of the difficulty of the test?
I think it's very elementary.
Tony McClure, the mayor of nearby Yankeetown, is outraged by the school and by the final examination it gives.
I've given it to a nephew that was going to be a sophomore in high school. The sophomore made 100% on it.
And we gave the same test to 7th grader Chaz Younglove. It took him 2 hours. He scored an 85%.
It was basically pretty easy. Some of the problems were similar to some I had in school.
Here's a sampling of questions. Art appreciation. Look at this picture and identify the blind man. Reading comprehension. Read this story and tell what city and state it takes place in. Math. Add these numbers. 923, 18, plus 407. And pick one of these 4 answers.
Are you Mrs. Lane?
Yes, I am, but out, please.
We can't talk to you about your high school?
No, not without permission from the principal.
The principal is the Reverend Ross Drysdale, minister of the First Pentecostal Church of Inglis. He's certified to teach history, German, and the Bible, and that's all he needed to open this school. He refused to grant us an interview, but said we could submit questions in writing to the church's Board of Trustees. Will Irby, head of the school system here in Levy County, says schools like this exploit uneducated people and do a disservice to students, employers, and society. To prove the superintendent's point, we first sent Allum and his diploma to the Army recruiter's office to enlist. The recruiter said the diploma would do nicely. Then we sent Allum to enroll in college. The counselor at St. Pete Junior College also said the diploma would suffice.
My office gets complaints about schools frequently, but we can't do anything about them. And because we can't, I don't even keep a record of them. It is possible to begin seeing a pattern, and that is what has happened with this particular school, that I was getting calls about the legitimacy of the school from all over the country.
State education officials say they cannot monitor schools like Calvary because the Constitution mandates a separation of church and state. Also on Saturday, officials at the school mailed us a letter stating that they do not accept children, that they do have volunteer teachers who work with students, and that their graduates do as well as any graduates any high school in the state.
Where does this leave education officials in Florida, Kevin? What do they do now?
About an hour after we interviewed them, they asked the Attorney General's office to begin an investigation of the school.
All right. Well, we'll check in with you later on this. Thanks very much, Kevin.
Fascinating story. Well, Dick Fletcher joins us next. He has his eye on the tropics.
September has that bad habit, you know, of being a busy month for storms and hurricanes. Dick Fletcher will be back in a moment. But we'll send you a high school diploma in the mail, and the Florida Department of State says there's nothing that can be done about it. Kevin Calvary will tell you.
Hey, Joe,
This is a high school.
What proceeded to happen next? If you are going into a third world country...
So is this. Calvary High School is a 2-hour drive north of Tampa in the town of Inglis, just past Crystal River. It calls itself a correspondence school for those wanting a high school diploma without doing all the work. The demand has boxes overflowing with mail from across the country.
We have no authority to look into the education provided by non-public schools.
But we did. Lee Allen is a college intern